Hey everybody, this is Lauren Stein with Alterity, and today we're going to go over importing sales orders. The import sales order utility is designed to speed up the process of turning orders placed outside of ACCTivate in an existing web store or other platform into full sales orders inside of ACCTivate through a batch import. This interface takes exported information from your shopping cart and makes a batch of sales orders. It can also be used to create new customers from your web store inside of ACCTivate. Some of our customers utilize the import due to their web store not being supported by the ACCTivate web store integration for one reason or another. This gives them the ability to continue to utilize their web store and also create sales orders in a batch in ACCTivate without having to manually touch each one individually. Without the full integration, though, they will still need to maintain the web orders manually since the completion of the order won't be sent back to their web store like it is via the web store add-on module. We also have customers that utilize this to get their EDI orders created. They use an application service provider or some other service which allows the ability to send sales orders as a flat file for processing. Keep in mind we do offer add-on modules to fully integrate with both web store and EDI providers. This webinar, though, will focus on flat file imports to enter sales orders in a batch. So this is only going to be about those flat file imports. To begin, a user must create a template. This is done via the File menu under Import Sales Orders. It's a similar process to creating import templates to update or create records such as customers and products in the database. But like I said, it's going to be slightly different, more so like the web store imports. Once the template has been created, the user can simply begin the import or create sales orders. They will be prompted to verify the file used in the import before completing to ensure the program is looking in the proper place for new orders. If you need to modify an existing template, the user can select the proper template and choose to edit template. This gives you the ability not only to change the file itself, but also the mapping or any other options saved previously. The user also has the capability to delete any templates not in use to clean up the list of templates viewed, as well as make them inactive. As you can see in this screenshot right here, it not only shows the sales order templates, but also the web store templates I have set up in my demo. The following slides are going to walk us through each window you'll see in setting up a new template. So we're going to go through all the options. And then we'll follow that with a demo of everything. So let's start with source file types. All files will need to be saved as a flat file or an Access database in order to import sales order information. The most commonly used is a flat or text file. For text files, we have the option to set a specific delimiter, a fixed length, or based on information from what we call the PDG shopping cart. The most commonly used specification is the delimiter, which can be comma, semicolon, tab, or any other special character which separates data in your file. The user can also specify whether the file includes a header row with titles. If so, it makes the mapping process easier since you can see the fields you're referring to in the import. When there are no header rows, ACCTivate will auto-number the columns beginning with a 0. If your file has a fixed length of characters per field, you will select the fixed length and specify the number of characters for ACCTivate to check before moving to the next field. You will also need to specify whether a line feed or carriage return exists. Like I said earlier, we also have the PDG shopping cart, which was a precursor to our web store import. It's still a CSV type import, but specific to this particular web store. This is really a legacy import, as most customers use the delimited function to specify the character used or utilize our full web store integration instead. The delimiter options are the same, but there is no option for row headers in that specific file type. Some web stores have the ability to export information as an Access database. If yours does, you can choose the file type of Access database and map fields based on a specific table within that database. And again, the most common way to use this sales order import is going to be through the text or CSV flat file import. And it also uses delimiters. That's really the most common one we see that comes through in support and implementation. All right, and on the next window, you'll see source file options. There are a couple of options with source files. You can either use one file which lists all order and order detail information, or use multiple files which utilize a key field to link all the information together. When using a single file, the header information will be repeated for each new detail line. For instance, an order with 3 different items will list the web order number, customer name, shipping address, etc. once for each new item. That's also similar to our other product and customer imports. We'll go over this during the demo. We've got both examples. We've got some other customers that use multiple files. Using multiple files comes in handy when the order header information and order detail information are located in 2 different files. You can link them together based on the web order number or some other unique identifier to ensure that information comes into ACCTivate properly. This means you can have one file which lists the customer and shipping information with another file listing only the order detail information, so there's no need to repeat any information in that file. As long as there is a unique key that links the two, the sales orders will be created properly in ACCTivate. Typically, that's going to be the web order number is going to be that unique identifier. We also have the option to use a pre-import script. This function is utilized to manipulate the data before it gets imported into ACCTivate. For those of you using web stores, this is similar to the custom values our support team can create to relay certain information from the XML into the template in a certain format. Contact our support team with assistance on this portion of the sales order import utility if you feel like you need to set this up. But again, a lot of our customers are just going to use that flat file and they're not going to need to have any translations before the import happens. With each template, the user has a few options for things like creating customers. If you want to create new customers from your import, you would need to set the option to yes for create customers from orders. To keep these customers separate, you can either create a new branch or customer type and set that as a default on the template for your reporting needs. Some of our customers wish to keep their customer list down due to restrictions on their versions of QuickBooks or any of the other accounting softwares we integrate with. Those customers will create a generic customer like web store or something else and map that customer ID in the template to default to that specific web order customer. This way, orders are imported into one customer with the billing and ship to addresses overridden by the actual order information. Having a generic customer also gives you a spot to view all of your web orders in one screen if that's something that you're looking for. Sometimes the import will give you warnings, such as the total amount not adding up to the same as on the import in ACCTivate, or maybe there's some sales tax issues. If you wish to be reminded about these warnings, you can set the create reminders for warnings to yes, which will prompt ACCTivate to create a business alert for this warning to be revisited in the future. If you wish to change the date time format or locale for number and dates, you can set the advanced configuration option to yes to specify this information to fit your needs. A lot of times this is going to be like if you're using the Canadian version or something like that, or if you're overseas and you wanted it to be a different format, then typically you'll want to set this to yes and set that locale information on there. There's another option for verbose logging. We always recommend keeping this setting to yes because this creates a verbose log for the orders created in ACCTivate. So if there are any errors, these logs will come in handy to figure out what's causing them. Let's say if you needed to contact support to figure out what's going on, this will give us an idea on what's causing these errors and what we can do to fix it. Also, if you have an internal person that's doing this, it'll definitely be really a good help if you are receiving any errors on the import. Okay, once you've set those options, you'll go to the preview window. This window consists of a preview of the data within the files you've selected. This gives you the opportunity to see how ACCTivate is separating the information to ensure the delimiter was set up properly. It also gives you a preview of any file selected, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 flat files or an Access database. If you see any errors on this window, you can go back and reset the delimiter or whatever you're using to specify this information to something that's going to actually separate the information out properly, and then you can go ahead and hit next and verify the data again before you begin mapping. And that brings us to actual mapping the template. After you've verified the data, you'll move to the next screen where you will map the columns of your file to fields in ACCTivate to create the sales orders. Expand the order document to begin mapping the order detail and order header information. The order detail will be things such as pricing, product information, quantity ordered, unit. If you wanted to have your ACCTivate pricing override it, you can map price codes, etc. The order header information consists of the customer information, billing, shipping addresses, payment information, if it exists, also tax information, and the web order number. This is going to be stuff that you're going to see on the header tab of the order itself, the sales order. The user can also set what we call conversions. This can be used on any field to translate information from one thing to another. Typically this is done for ship via information. The web store shipping information doesn't always match ACCTivate shipping setup, so the conversions give the user the ability to make something like best way shipping translate to something more along lines of UPS ground or whatever shipping makes sense for your business. During the demo, we're going to be setting up a conversion for tax codes based on the tax category ID coming in on the flat file that we'll be using. So you'll get to see how to set those up as well. If you wish to see a summary of the mapping, you can click the summary button, which will create a text file for your review. So this will give you good information. Let's say if you were testing this import in your model company, just to make sure that everything runs smoothly before you wanted to actually create orders in your live company, you can click that summary button after you've verified that everything's set up correctly, and use that summary to set up the mapping in your live ACCTivate company. Because typically we don't get rid of the model or practice company after you've gone live with ACCTivate, specifically for purposes of testing stuff like this. Okay, after you've mapped everything, when ready, you can import the orders. ACCTivate will separate each new order being imported with its corresponding web and sales order number as a reference. Once all are imported, you'll see a message showing how many orders were imported, as well as it being complete. You can now open the sales order in ACCTivate to process as you would normally. On the sales order itself, you will see the related web order number, which is also a searchable field for sales orders. So you're not only going to be creating these web order numbers, but that web order number is going to be a reference in ACCTivate, which is a searchable field. And then also if you have multiple templates set up, you will also be able to see which template was used to bring in that order. So if you have, a generic sales order import, it'll show that. If you have a multi-flat file sales order import, if you wanted to name them based on wherever you're getting these orders from, then it'll show you that information in the search window. So let's go ahead and switch over to ACCTivate to see how this process is done. We'll be creating and editing a template for flat file imports. Alright, so I'm going to do one quick note before we begin. If you don't want to just bring in all the sales orders automatically and you want to validate the sales order information before you actually create them, you can go to File, Configuration Management, Web Store Options, and you check this Provide Confirmation before importing sales orders. Again, that's going to validate the sales order information before you bring it into ACCTivate, so you're not, if you get a lot of warnings or errors or anything like that, you can go back and modify the import or figure out what's wrong and redo it before it actually creates them. And this warning, you can either import all orders regardless of warnings, or you can skip orders with warnings. And again, we can also set that option to create business alerts whenever we actually do create warnings. So we're going to keep this checked to provide confirmation so we can see how that works as well. Alright, so to create a new template, we go to File, Import Sales Orders. As you can see here, I've already set a multi-file import up. We will come back to that later, but we're going to start out by creating a new template. So you go to Import Sales Orders, Create Template, and you have to give it an ID. Now this ID can be unique to the actual template. I'm going to do sales order import because I'm not doing it from a specific web store or another provider of some kind, but you can definitely give it the name to give you more of an idea of where this information is coming from. Make sure to select the type of sales order. It defaults to sales order because I'm in the import sales order window, but if you do have the web store module, you can also set up a web store template here as well by selecting the web store. We're going to keep it as sales orders. Then you hit next. And this is what I was talking about with these source files. So right now there's none, but you can see that there's 3 different sources that you can use and also that pre-import script. Right now we're just going to use the single flat file. So we go to text file, and also you see the access database. But we're going to be doing it from a CSV, so that's going to be a text, and it's going to be delimited. Again, here's the fixed length and then the PGG shopping cart as well. And then we go ahead and select the file. So you browse here. I've got sales order imports saved as a folder on my desktop. So typically you're probably going to be exporting orders into the same place every time you're exporting them from whatever provider you're using. And so you can I would probably just keep a folder that they all go into, and you can either rename them or you can give them dated names and then just replace the file every time you need to do it. So we'll do sales order example. It's comma delimited, and it also contains field names. So we're going to select that option. Okay, and then everything's good here. We'll go ahead and hit next. Now again, here's the template options to create customers from orders, create reminders for warnings, show advanced configuration options. We're going to be importing as a web order customer as a default for this example, so create customer is going to be set to no. And then also, I don't want any warnings for the business alert since we're validating data. We'll be able to see that any errors or anything like that in the validation. And here's the preview screen. If you have multiple files, you'll see them listed here in these tabs. Like I said, we've only got one right now. This row number right here is something that ACCTivate automatically adds. And then we've got the headers of order ID, goods total, total quantity, weights. I did this as it would be exported from one of your shopping carts, so you can see all the header information right here. And you can see that since this is a single file, a lot of stuff is repeated. That's just because we have to keep it all together. If we were using a multiple files, then we wouldn't have to repeat that information. You would see one for header and one for detail, and we'll go into that a little bit more in depth here in a little bit. So we'll go ahead and hit next. And this is where we actually map the information in ACCTivate. So you expand order document. We'll start with the order detail. And when you're in here, you can map to any of these fields based on the information that comes out in your exported file. So for now, I've got display price, which is going to be the product price in my import, and this is a list of fields available in the CSV file. So we'll go to product price, and display price is the display price that you would actually see on the order. And we'll map product ID. And quantity ordered. And we just have some basic information in this flat file right here. But like I said earlier, if you didn't want the export to override your pricing, then you wouldn't map your display price, you would map the price code, or just not map any pricing whatsoever and just let ACCTivate do list pricing. And then also you can do any special instructions, and this is again all going to be in the detail line. The price unit, the unit of measure for the specific item. If you sell this item in multiple units of measure and you wanted to specify that our web store only sells in cases, but we also sell in eaches internally in ACCTivate, but we want to set this to case, we would set the default to case unit here. And also if you wanted it to go to a specific warehouse or be taken out of a specific warehouse, then you would map the warehouse here as well as a default value. So let's go ahead in the order header. And again, the order header is going to be the header tab of the sales order window. I don't have any payment information in this particular example, so we're not going to map any of the payment information, but we are going to have everything go into a web order customer. So to do that, you select the customer ID and you browse to your customer list. And then I'm going to select this web orders customer. And again, if you have these fields available in your export, you can map to anything like order date, order number. If you wanted your web order number to match your sales order number, you would map order number to the web order number. Also order status, if you wanted to bring them in as quotes or booked orders, you could do that here. or you could also put that in your export. Order type, you can also do order, credit memo, or quotes. Let's say if you had a ton of credit memos that you wanted to import instead of hand key or quotes, you can also use this import tool to do that. Purchase order number, all this information that if it's available for you, then you can map it in this template. But we do have sales tax on some of these orders, so we're going to map sales tax to the tax total. And also we're going to do the ship to address. We'll do the first line as the name and the second line as the actual address lines. And the city. State. And also the zip code. And if you know what the name of the column is, you can just go ahead and press Z for zip code, because I knew that zip code was going to be Z, so you can do that and it'll jump to that specific field. And ship via is our shipping description in this exported file. Shipping charges is going to be the shipping cost. And then we'll also map the sold to information. And the reason I'm mapping both the sold to and ship to information is because we're importing into a generic web orders customer, so we want both of them to override based on who actually ordered this, not anything that's listed in ACCTivate as that web orders customer. Okay, and then we're going to map the tax category ID to the tax name. And in our exported information, the tax name is our actual tax category IDs. So I'm going to map the same thing on the tax code, and I'm going to click this Show Conversions. And since I know what the tax names are in here, one of them is out. And we're going to make that go to the non-taxable tax code. And then there's another one for Fort Worth. And we're going to make that go to tax. So what this does is ACCTivate is going to look at this tax name field for the tax code. And if it sees out, it's going to import it as non. If it sees FW, it's going to import it as tax. And we'll see how that works here in a moment. And then we're going to set the default terms to net 30 because these customers haven't paid yet. So we're going to give them our usual default terms of net 30. And then total amount is going to be the order total. And web order number is our order ID in this exported file. Okay, and let's just make sure that everything we need here is mapped, and we just scroll up and just take a quick look here. And you can see these R fields are required fields, so obviously it's going to require a quantity and product ID. And then the order header information, we've got the default customer, sales tax, shipping information, including the shipping charges, sold to information, which is the billing information, and the tax that has these conversions set. Okay, so let's hit next, and then we'll validate those orders. And so you see we've got two web orders right here that are being validated. Neither of them have any errors on them, so we're going to go ahead and import these orders. And now you can see that it gives us not only the web order number, but the ACCTivate sales order number. So we can go ahead and go to the sales order itself. And you see the bill to and ship to addresses both have the override checked because we've overridden them, but this is actually showing up in the web orders customer. And we've also got the specific web order this is related to right here. And then you can see the tax location is out, which was the tax name, and the tax code is non, which is that conversion that we set up. And if we go to the detail, this lists all the products. The shipping charge automatically goes into the shipping item that we use in ACCTivate as a default. And then you can also see that one of the items is on back order, so the order total and the scheduled show that one of those items is not scheduled, but the order total itself did match up to the import or the exported information, so there weren't any errors on that. And let's go ahead and take a look at one of the taxable, because this one was taxable. So we've got Fort Worth tax rate, tax code of tax, everything is scheduled, so this order is imported and ready to go to invoice. So we'll go ahead and close this, and we'll hit yes. We want to save those changes because we want to come back to that. So let's say that you may be a couple hours later and you've got more orders, or the next day if you're processing these daily. We can go to File, Import Sales Orders. We've got another file that we want to import. We don't necessarily need to change any of the fields that are mapped because this is from the same web store that we've exported information, so everything is set up or formatted exactly the same as it was in the original. So you select Sales Order Import, which is the one that we were using. You click Begin Import. That'll send you to the source files. And if you're exporting as like a dated files, so you wanted to not overwrite every time you exported orders in case there's warnings or anything like that, you would select the new file. So I've set up a Sales Order Example 2. And hit open, and I'm not going to change anything else here because like I said, nothing else changed. It's going to give you another preview, and then you hit next, and it doesn't take you to the mapping because we're just going to begin the import. We just switched out the files, and then we're going to do validate orders, and again it goes through the validation, and then it imports those orders, and it shows us those order numbers as well. Okay, so that pretty much covers the single file import, where we went from the point of creating the import all the way through importing the data, as well as switching out the files in case you exported them again. So we'll go ahead and hit close, and let's take a look at the multi-file imports. So I've already set this one up, so we'll go ahead and edit template. As you can see, I gave it a name, multi-file import. And so this is the difference between the multi-file and the single. So we've got 2 source files. You can have up to 3. The first source file is going to be the order header information. Again, you can have this in any order when you set up the templates. And the second one is order detail. Both of these are CSV files, so they're both going to be comma delimited, and they both have first row contains field names. And we can also check that this source 2 is required because source 2 has all of our order detail information. Sometimes customers will have 3 files. Let's say if you have an export that gives you, one gives you order header, one gives you order detail, and one gives you the shipping information separately. As long as each of those files has a key field between them, you can put all 3 of them in here, and then you'll select the key field. Okay, so we've got both of our files. We'll hit next. This one we want to create customers from our web store orders. We're not going to set a default customer because let's say, we're not worried about the customer count in QuickBooks, so we want to create these new customers to track them all separately. Again, we've got that validation set, so we're going to leave reminders set to no. And then we'll go ahead and hit next. And like I said earlier, you can see the different tabs when you have multiple source files. So this first one is the header information. As you can see, it's the order ID, the shipping information, none of it's repeated, the tax name, tax total, order total, it's specific to each customer on each one of these. And then we have the order detail information. Now you do see some repeated numbers here, but that's because it's the order number, the web order number itself. And that's just because, the first web order has 2 items, the second web order has 3 items, and so does the third web order. And each of them has their own price and quantity information here, as well as products. So we'll hit next. And this is where you would set up the relationships between the source files. So in my source files, the web order number is the key field. So I've set that to be order ID equals order ID, because again, that's going to be my web order number, and it's going to be the same on both files. So even if it's not the web order number, if you have some other unique ID in the files, that's where you would select them here and you would relate them to each other. Okay, and then if you had multiple relationships, you could set those up here as well, but like I said, we've only got web order numbers here. So we hit next, and this order detail is going to be the same as the other one, but as you can see in the drop down, you've got two sections and they both start with row number. So this first section is going to be the order header information, and this second section that starts with row number is going to be the order detail information. So we've got price, product ID, quantity ordered. Again, if you have any of the other fields in there, then you can map those here. We are bringing some payment information in on these orders. So I've mapped the amount paid to the order total, because obviously the customer is going to pay the order total. They're not going to pay just a partial. I didn't do any credit card information, so I didn't map any of that here. Also, I gave it contact information in case you wanted to import that into the order. You can import who to contact as well as their phone number. Their customer ID is mapped to the order header customer information, because again, we want to create customers or import into existing customers if those customers have already been created. Also, we've got method of payment mapped, and in our import we've got a couple of payment types that match the ones that we already have set up in ACCTivate. Again, if you need to, let's say if it's going to be Visa or MasterCard, and that's how it is in the exported data, you would do show conversions. You do from Visa to Visa MasterCard to match whatever the values that already exist in ACCTivate, just to make sure it matches up properly. And then we've got the tax total, because we do have some sales tax. And let's go ahead and map the shipping information, just to make sure in case that customer changed their shipping information on the order and they're an existing customer. And you can scroll up or down to select a field there as well. Shipping cost, sold to information, which is the billing information. We've got the same translation set up for tax name on tax code, because tax code is either going to be non-taxable or taxable based on how it's set up in QuickBooks. And also tax category ID, those are going to be your actual tax categories or tax locations on the ship to information. Since most of our customers pay when they order online, we're going to set the default to net 10 just in case somebody wasn't able to pay. A lot of times when web orders are coming in, people pay the full amount. So if you wanted to set this to COD or set up a payment term that is paid online or something like that, you can do that here. Order total, order ID. And since that all looks good, we'll go ahead and hit next and validate the orders. And again, this is showing us the multifile import name. And then also it's validating the orders. We don't see any warnings or errors on this, so we're good to go to press import orders. And then again, here we have the sales orders that are actually created in ACCTivate. So we'll go to the 3-1 order. It's taxable. We've actually got a customer name instead of web orders. We did override the billing and shipping address, but again, if it's already an existing customer, then you don't have to map that information. And then all the detail and shipping information is all here. Okay, so that pretty much sums it up for sales order imports. So just an overview, you can create, edit, or delete templates. We've done creating and editing. If you wanted to delete it, you just highlight, hit delete template, and it'll delete it. So, and all the other file types are pretty much processed the same way. The templates are all going to be set up the same. It's just going to be based on the file type. So if it's fixed length, delimited another way, or let's see, that access database based on specific tables in the access database, but again, the most common is going to be flat files. So let's see if we have any questions that have gone unanswered so far. Let's see, show you the file. I don't have Excel loaded on my VM, but I believe I can open this with Notepad. So let's do this. And you can see how these files are set up. So since it's comma delimited, if you open up in Notepad, everything's going to be separated by commas. So it looks a little confusing here, but if you open it up in Excel as a CSV file, everything is in its own row and column. But this is how it's seen in Notepad. And again, you can use text files. You just have to know what the delimiter is, whether that's commas or tabs or semicolons or whatever you prefer to use, or whatever your web store exports. We can take a look at the order header information. Again, this is the one that we use for the multifile import. Everything is separated by commas again. And then let's also take a look, and then you can see the headers as well all the way across the top. And again, all the commas line up in the detail for what the headers are. And then the order detail for that one was pretty simple. It's pretty much just the order ID, product ID, quantity, ordered, and then also the price. And just like Brad said, the prescript option for setting up a template is very specific to your needs. So if you do need help with that, you should contact the support team, because I don't really have a scenario that I would use the prescript option. Let's see other questions. Is there any automation available for sales order imports, like through the Windows scheduler? I'm not sure if that's a good idea, because again, you're going to be exporting this information out of like EDI or your web store that doesn't integrate with ACCTivate. You don't want to have that Windows scheduler or something pulling that data out and running an import. I'm not even sure if it's something that can be automated out inside of ACCTivate, but it may be able to be automated to export the data. But again, if the users aren't running the imports before the Windows scheduler pulls another exported file, you run the risk of losing the order information that was overridden. But like Brad said, once a template is set up, it's just a few clicks to complete the process. So you don't even have to edit it. You just go to sales order import, begin import. If the file has been replaced, all you do is hit next, next, validate. Again, validate is because we've got that option in configuration manager checked. If you don't have that checked, it'll just import the orders. And you can see some of the warnings here. It's already been imported, and it gives you the order number in ACCTivate as well. So that also gives us an idea of what the warnings would look like if we were to get some. We also had somebody ask about whether or not we can set the order status to be something other than scheduled. Yes, we can. So you can go to Edit Template, go to Next until you get to the actual mapping, Order Header, and then this order status right here. You can either set this to default to one of these order statuses. Obviously, canceled or rejected doesn't really make sense for sales order imports, but you can import them as quotes, booked, or scheduled orders. If you wanted to, you could include that in your exported information from your web store or whatever provider you're using, and they could give you that information. So if you're using an outside source for quotes and sales orders, make sure they export the status of the sales order. And again, if it doesn't technically match up to what ACCTivate has, you can set up those conversions to match up. So the from would be, let's say if the provider has quoted or quotes as the value, but that obviously doesn't match up to quote, you would put that quoted or quotes value in the from, and then put the ACCTivate value in the to make sure it lines up to the way ACCTivate sees it. And we asked about what type of scripts do these use for the prescript. It runs a command line, so something like CS script or VB script would work. We also have a customer asking choosing location ID or contact ID that are associated with the customer. You can definitely do that, especially if that information is being exported from your web store. So, well, it looks like the contact information you can override, but you can't select the specific contact ID. But the ship to information, let's go ahead and take a look. That's going to be the location ID. That's going to be the ship to location ID. So if your web store includes those location IDs, or if it is EDI that maybe didn't integrate well with our add-on module and they export that location ID, you can map that to this location ID here, and that's going to be related to the shipping information. And again, make sure that's existing locations, not creating new locations. And we just saw some warnings, so I'm not going to go over that. And if you do get a warning and you have that option set in Configuration Manager to create, or in the option of the actual template itself, it'll be in the web store. You'll see the web store warnings right here, and it'll tell you what web order number it was, as well as what the warning was. And also, somebody asked about if you have commas in the company name. You're probably going to want to use a different delimiter than commas if you've got commas in your data. So a lot of people use, maybe that pipe delimiter, or they've also got, or maybe tabs would work as well. I just use commas as an example because that's just the data that I had. But any character, any special character that you wanted to use could be specified on the template. So if we go back here, if you've got other, you can put that here. So you can do that pipe delimiter. You could even do brackets. Anything that makes sense or anything that separates the data in your file. Okay, we had another good question. If the user ID company name doesn't match up identically to the one in ACCTivate, will the new order create a new account or list as an error? This depends on the option you choose for the template. If you've got create customers from orders set to no, it will not create a new order. It'll say that it couldn't, it's that customer doesn't exist. If it doesn't match up identically, but you've got it set to yes, it will tell you that that customer is being created because that customer doesn't exist in the database, because ACCTivate expects it to be an identical match. So you may want to set that to no and map customer ID, and also set the validation so you can see a warning saying that that customer is not found in the database. Okay, well, that's pretty much all the questions that we have. We had some really good ones come through. As always, feel free to look up any questions on our help site. As you can see here, this screenshot has changed. We've added the ability to download updates, create or review support requests, and request remote support on this help site, which has been very handy. We're trying to get everything in all in one spot. I hope you were able to learn a lot about importing sales orders today. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of the day.